Meshmixer is a free open source software from Autodesk. It's one of the leading programs to edit and prepare mesh files like STL and OBJ. First of all, you will need to download and install Autodesk Meshmixer. Go to Google and type in Meshmixer. Your very first option would be the Autodesk Meshmixer. Once open, you'll be able to see that there is a download tab on the top right, but you can also scroll down where the bunny rabbit is and you can click on download as well. You have two options, Windows and Mac. Let's click on the Windows, and you'll be able to see that you can have the Win64 English and you can download. When you first launch Meshmixer, you are presented with the 3D scene window. You also have a panel of options to choose from. Import will let you bring in common 3D model formats such as STL and OBJ. Another way to import your object is to simply drag your object from your desktop or folder right straight into the 3D scene window. Open will allow you to load a native Meshmixer file which has a mix extension. You will typically save to this format once you import and work on something, but haven't quite finished, so you save it in the mix extension format so that you can reopen and work on it later on. In the panel of options, you have three basic options that you can start with: bunny, sphere, and plane. You can also click on the File tab on your top left and import one of the three basic objects this way: bunny, sphere, or plane. On the left-hand side, you will see a bar of tools. Let's go ahead and import our bunny into our 3D scene window. We have our bunny sitting on a printer bed. In this case, it's Autodesk Amber. For the purpose of this video, let's just turn off the printer bed. Go to your top left-hand corner, click on View, and uncheck Show Printer Bed. So let's learn how to move around in our 3D window. If I press the right mouse button, I can orbit. If I scroll up on my mouse wheel, then I can zoom in and out. If I hold down on my mouse scroll wheel, then I can pan. If you get totally lost and you don't know where you are, click on View and then Recenter View, and it will bring your object back into the center. Let's move our attention to some of the tools on the left-hand side. Click on Edit, and let's focus on Transform. Transform allows us to see the manipulator. The manipulator is a set of 3 arrows with some rotational handles. The manipulator allows us to click on one of the arrows and let us move the object in that direction. I can also rotate the object by clicking on one of the rotational handles. You can also use the manipulator to scale the object uniformly or non-uniformly. Click and drag the white square in the center of the manipulator to scale the object uniformly, making it larger or smaller. You can squash the object by using the non-uniform scaling handles at each axis. Click on that little square at the end of each arrow. Drag and stretch your object. The red arrow represents the x-axis. You will need to click on Accept to finalize the Transform tool. Let's move on to our Sculpt tool. There are two classes of sculpting tools in Meshmixer. There's Volume and there's Surface. For the purpose of our video, we will just concentrate on Volume. You can select the different brush operations by opening the brush window. To select any one of these brush operations, you left-click, drag, and then move your mouse around. So let's click on Draw To. And I'm adding. Each brush also has a strength and a size parameter. Strength defines either the speed or the power of the brush, and the size defines the affected area. So let's increase our size, and our strength is at 100. You can see that I'm adding quite a lot. I can undo the last step that I did by holding down on the Control key and clicking on my Z key. So I can keep clicking on my Z in order to undo that step that was in sequence. Meshmixer stores a long history of all the steps. In order to bring back that previous step again, I can again hold on my Control key and press Y, and it will bring back everything that I did, in case I changed my mind. We can go and click on Smooth, and we can smooth everything down. So let's reduce the strength and the size. Oh, I'll increase the size, and I can smooth it. So there's a lot of steps that we can do with or choose in Sculpt. And the best way to get the feel of sculpting is just import a bunny or a ball or whatever object you want, and give it a go. So again, I can keep clicking on my Control and Z to undo everything again. So now we are back to the original bunny. So if we click the W key on our keyboard, we'll be able to see the mesh triangle configurations of our object. So as you can see, that they're pretty good tight little triangles all around. If I want to undo the mesh wireframe, just re-click W again. Another way to have a look at the wire mesh of your scans is to click on the View and then Show Wireframe. That will give you the same results. So I'm going to click out with the wireframe for now, and now I'm going to go to Meshmix, and I'm just going to import a sphere, and I'm just going to place it right there. So right now we have two separate objects. They're not joined at all. I'm going to use the manipulator right now and bring it in and bring it to my tail. Again, I'm going to use the center white square in order to reduce the size of my sphere. So again, I click down with my left mouse button and hold down, and then I just move it down to make it smaller. So now back to the manipulator, we're going to grab the arrow and move it up. And then push it in. Okay, so we have two objects that are intersecting each other right now. In order for me to accept the transform operation for this sphere, I would have to click on this Accept button. So if I have a look at these, they're not joint, and they're just overlapping each other. If I look at the wire frame, I press W again, and I can see that the sphere has tighter triangles and the bunny has slightly wider ones. Let's hide our wire mesh by pressing the W key on your keyboard. Now go back up to View and scroll down and click Show Object Browser. So now you can see that I have two objects in my 3D scene window. I have the bunny, so if I click on the bunny, it will be activated. If I click on Mesh, that indicates my sphere, and now it's highlighted, and it is also in our object browser. So we have two. If I click the little eye, then I can hide one of the objects and it will not appear in my 3D window. So now if I click on my bunny, my sphere is gone. If I re-click it, and now I can see that my sphere is back into my 3D window. So I'd like to show you how to do a Boolean union. Click on the bunny and hold down the Control key on your keyboard, then click the other object, which is your sphere. You can see that both objects are highlighted in your 3D scene window. A new window will appear. Click on the Boolean union option that appears there. Click on it. In order to finalize this operation, you would have to click on the Accept to join both of these items together. You can now see that both items have been joined and you have one object in the object browser. If you like, you can click on Sculpt and perform some smoothing movements. Smooth. Click on your W key on your keyboard to activate the wireframe. You can see that there are two different wire meshes, and in between a slightly different configuration of the triangles where we had performed the smooth function. Let's unclick our W wireframe again. I'd like to show you how to do a Boolean difference. So click on Meshmix and drag in another sphere and place it on top of the tail. You can move the sphere with the center circle in any direction. If I click on the little arrow portion of the sphere, I can scroll down with my mouse to make it smaller or larger. I can scale the sphere down. You can see that the sphere is sitting into the bunny tail. Click on the Accept button. With the same movement, click and hold down your Control button, click Bunny, and then click the dropped part number 1. So now both items are activated. Move to your window and click Boolean Difference. You can see that the little sphere was cut out of the bunny tail. Press Accept to finalize the function. Let's take a moment to evaluate our scan here. As you can see, there's a blue line at the bottom. This means that it has open boundaries. The line here represents an open face where you have a front side and a back side. So the back side is represented by the pink color, and then the front side is represented by the gray side. These are called faces. As you can see, that there is no boundary between the front face and the back face. It's just a very infinitely thin, very thin skin. Let's learn a bit more about the Select tool on the left-hand side. This tool allows you to select a portion of your object rather than your whole object. You can paint certain select faces on your object with your brush. These painted faces will be highlighted in orange. You can increase or decrease your brush size. So you can have more coverage or less coverage. By holding down the Shift key, you can erase certain areas that you do not want to be selected. So I'm holding my Shift key down, and now I can erase certain areas. And again, let's paint under the neck. You can see that the resolution of your selected area is based on the triangle of your object. So let's click the W key on your keyboard. There we go. And if I turn this around, you'll be able to see that the way you painted follows the configurations of the wire mesh of your object. So let's say I want to completely erase the rabbit's head and fill in that whole area. So my first step would to click on Modify and scroll down and click Smooth Boundary. So as you can see now, I have a smooth, even line going right around. I'm going to accept this, and so my selected area right now is quite even. So now I can go to Edit, Erase, and Fill. So I'll click that, and now I've successfully removed the rabbit's head. So as you can see, the mesh configuration in the area that was removed and filled is nice and smooth. And this is because if you bring your attention right here, there are 3 different options of replace fill type. So we chose the smooth MVC. If I choose the flat minimal option, then you can see that the triangles are different and it's not really a good fill. This will cause issues, and this area here will not be as refined. It'll have a rough surface. If I choose flat remesh, well, the outcome is a lot better, but it's not smooth. We have a nice sharp little area here, like the border area is sharper. So let's go back to our smooth. And again, with anything, we have to finalize this operation, the replace and fill operation. So I'm going to accept. So that's one way of using the select tool to modify and change only a portion of our object. So let's clear this section right now. I'm going to show you another way to select only a certain portion using the select tool again. And this is with our polygonal fences. So I can perform a laser fence, which is selecting an area just slightly away from my model. So basically I'm pointing my mouse on the background. I click down on my left mouse key and just draw a line. And the way I've circled away from the rest of the object, which means that one side will be selected. Sometimes the opposite side is selected depending on how you draw your line. It can be tricky, so just play around with it so you can get the feel of it, of using the laser select tool. I can go to modify, click smooth boundary. It will create a smooth line, border line. And then I can accept, and now I have a nice even boundary in order to discard or erase or fill. So I selected the smooth, so let's do the flat remesh, and you can see this one here. And if you're curious about the wire mesh, click your W key on your keyboard and you'll see the wire mesh here again. So I'm going to accept this. Accept. Now another method of doing the select fences, which is a polygonal fence, is basically click anywhere out in the background, but keep clicking so that you actually create like a fence. And this again will create the same effect. And then the same steps, click on smooth boundary, accept, and then again you can do discard, reduce. So if I do reduce for this case here, let's just click. So you can see the mesh has changed. And I can even do the slider here to reduce how my mesh falls in place. So this is wide, big triangles, which means the detailing of my model will be reduced. And then again, I can scroll the opposite way and increase with more meshes, with more mesh triangles. So I can accept. Let's clear this selection. I'd like to show you one more thing for the select tool. With our brush, let's paint a certain area. So I'd like to do, let's say, a saddle on the bunny's back. So I've painted this area, and like normal, we're going to go to modify, and we're going to do smooth boundary. So you can see the nice outline. I'm going to accept this. So that's going to be our little saddle that goes on the bunny back. So now what we can do is we can move to Edit and Extrude. Now we see that there's a saddle on the bunny's back, and we can increase this offset. Right now it is set at 1.86, so we can either decrease it or increase it. So let's leave it at 2, and the mesh is pretty good, so we're going to accept this. Now the direction is constrained in one direction, and that's what we want right now. It's just going up. So we can accept. And I can clear section. So we made a saddle on top of the bunny's back. Click on the W to hide your wireframe mesh. Let's recap on what we learned during this video. We know where to go to download Meshmixer and how to install it. We learned how to move, rotate, and scale our object by using the manipulator. We covered the very basic sculpting functions, and we brought our attention to look at the wireframe mesh triangles of our object. We know how to do simple Boolean union and Boolean difference functions. We also learned how to use some of the very basic select tool functions without going into too much detail. All of these tips will come in handy when working within Meshmixer. Now you have your object here, and if you want to export it in the STL format, go to the top left corner, click File, Export, and then you can save your bunny or your file or your case or your model on your desktop or in a specific folder in the STL binary format. Click Save.